Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about Newcastle disease, or ND for short. It's a really big problem for chickens and other birds. It's a sickness that spreads super easily and can make birds sick all over the world. ND can cause all sorts of problems, from sniffles and coughs to sadly even death, so it's a big worry for farmers because it can cost them a lot of money. ND is caused by a tiny germ called a virus, specifically avian paramyxovirus type 1 or APMV1. This virus is like a cousin to the ones that cause measles and mumps in people. APMV1 is a special kind of virus made of RNA. It spreads very quickly from bird to bird. ND is a huge problem for the poultry industry because sick birds mean less money for farmers, fewer eggs, and sometimes even trade restrictions. This is especially hard in developing countries where raising chickens is a big part of how people make a living and get their food. In these places, North Dakota outbreaks can be really tough on families. So how does this ND thing spread? Well, it's caused by that tiny germ we talked about, the avian paramyxovirus type 1 or APMV1. This virus has many different forms, some mild, some strong. It spreads mostly through direct contact with sick birds or their droppings. Sick birds also spread the virus through their coughs and sneezes and even their eggs. If healthy birds touch these things, they can get sick too, but it's not just direct contact. Things like feeders, water containers and cages can also have the virus on them. Even people's clothes and shoes can carry it, spreading it from farm to farm. And get this, the virus can even travel through the air. Sick birds breathe it out and it can float quite far, especially in stuffy coops. This makes it really hard to control because it can quickly spread to nearby farms. Newcastle disease has been around for a while. The first time we heard about it was way back in the 1920s on an island called Java in Indonesia and a place called Newcastle upon Tyne in England. That's actually how it got its name. After that, it spread all over the world, making chickens sick in Asia, Europe, Africa and the Americas. It spread so easily. ND is still a big problem today, especially in countries where not all the birds get vaccinated and where farms don't have good hygiene practices. When ND hits, it can cause a lot of problems like birds dying, fewer eggs being laid, and countries not wanting to trade chickens. This is especially hard on developing countries where many people rely on chickens for their food and income. Newcastle disease can show up in different ways depending on a few things like how strong the virus is, how old the bird is, what kind of bird it is, and if it's already a bit sick. In chickens, North Dakota can be anything from a mild cold to a very serious illness. Sometimes it just causes sniffles, coughs and runny noses, and not many birds die. Other times it can cause more serious breathing problems and even affect the birds' brains, making them shaky, wobbly and unable to walk straight. In the worst cases, North Dakota causes really bad sickness with breathing problems, greenish poop, swollen heads and necks, shaking, wobbly walking, twisted necks, and sadly, many birds die quickly. Section 5, diagnosis, figuring out if it's Newcastle disease. So how do we know if it's actually ND? Well, animal doctors look for things like breathing problems, shaky movements, and lots of birds dying. But that's not enough to be sure, because other chicken diseases can look the same. We need to do some tests. There are a few ways to test for ND. One way is to take samples from sick birds and see if the virus grows in a lab. Another way is to do a blood test to see if the bird's body is fighting the virus. And there are even newer tests that can find the virus's genetic material, like a fingerprint. These tests are really fast and accurate, so we can quickly figure out if it's ND and start doing something about it. Section 6. Biosecurity, keeping Newcastle disease away. The best way to deal with ND is to prevent it in the first place. This is where biosecurity comes in. It's all about keeping germs out of the coop. We can do this by limiting visitors, making everyone wear special clothes and shoes, and having foot baths with disinfectant at the entrance. It's also really important to keep everything clean. Regular cleaning and disinfection of the coop, equipment and trucks is a must. We also need to be careful about moving birds, feed and other things between farms. It's a good idea to keep different age groups separate and to get chicks from places that are also careful about biosecurity. Section 7. Vaccination, protecting birds with vaccines. Vaccines are like superhero shields for chickens. They help protect birds from getting sick. With ND, there are different kinds of vaccines. Some are made with a weak version of the virus, and others are made with a dead virus. The weak virus vaccines work really well, but you have to be careful with how you store them. The dead virus vaccines are safer, but they might not be as strong. The best vaccine and how often to give it depends on things like the type of farm, how common ND is in the area, how old the birds are, and what the local rules are. It's always best to talk to an animal doctor who knows a lot about chickens to make a good vaccination plan. Section 8. Recent outbreaks. Remembering the danger. Even though we have ways to control ND, there are still outbreaks happening, which reminds us that we can't let our guard down. These outbreaks can cause big problems for farmers and the chicken trade. Sometimes new versions of the virus pop up, or the virus might spread through infected birds or contaminated things. Not having good biosecurity or not vaccinating enough birds can also lead to outbreaks. This is why it's so important to keep an eye out for ND, act fast if we think it's happening, and work together, farmers, vets and the government, to stop it. Section 9. Conclusion. Staying alert and working together. Newcastle disease is still a big problem around the world, affecting chickens and the people who rely on them. Even though we have tools like biosecurity and vaccines, we need to stay alert and work together. Keeping farms clean, controlling who comes in and out, and being careful about moving birds are all super important. Vaccines are essential too, but we need to make sure we're using the right ones and giving them to enough birds. We also need to keep an eye out for ND, catch it early, and act quickly. Farmers, vets, and the government all need to work together to stop it from spreading. By staying alert, working together, and learning more about ND, we can protect chickens and the people who depend on them.